Leonardo Alcantara checked his platinum watch as the waiter poured champagne into Camilla's crystal flute. The Eiffel Tower sparkled through the restaurant's window, illuminating his wife's perfectly sculpted features. 10 years of marriage to one of Brazil's most beautiful women, and yet he felt nothing as she smiled at him across the table. "To us," Camilla said, raising her glass. Her diamond bracelet caught the light, another expensive gift he'd bought to fill the growing emptiness between them. "To Paris," Leonardo replied, clinking his glass against hers. He had brought her here hoping to rekindle something, anything, in their marriage. The city of light was supposed to be magical, transformative. So far, it only highlighted how distant they'd become. Camilla took a small sip, careful not to smudge her lipstick. "The fashion show tomorrow will be divine. Everyone who matters will be there." Leonardo nodded absently. As CEO of Alcantara Industries, he had built an empire that stretched across continents. His name opened doors, commanded respect, filled bank accounts. And yet lately, he'd been asking himself if any of it mattered. "You're not listening," Camilla said, setting down her glass, with a sharp clink. "Sorry, just thinking about the Asian market expansion." The lie came easily. Camilla sighed. "Always business. I thought this trip was supposed to be about us." "It is," he assured her, reaching across to take her hand. Her skin was soft, perfect, cold. After dinner, they walked along the Seine. Camilla held his arm, her designer heels clicking against the cobblestones. Street musicians played romantic melodies, couples embraced on benches, the moon hung low over Notre Dame. All the ingredients for romance, yet Leonardo felt like an actor going through motions in a play he'd performed too many times. "Let's go this way," Camilla suggested, pointing toward a brightly lit shopping street. "I heard there are some charming boutiques still open." Leonardo followed dutifully. His wife navigated Paris like she navigated life, always seeking the next shiny thing, the next acquisition, the next moment to be seen. They turned onto a street lined with bookshops, cafes, and art galleries. Tourists mingled with locals. Cameras flashed. Street artists sketched caricatures. And then the world stopped. She was standing outside a small bookstore, leafing through a novel. Her chestnut hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, just as it had 15 years ago. She wore a simple blue dress, no designer label, no excessive jewelry, just Sophia, as natural and real as the day he'd left her. Leonardo froze mid-step. Camilla tugged at his arm, but he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Sophia looked up from her book and her eyes met his across the crowded street. For a moment, confusion crossed her face, then recognition dawned. The book slipped from her fingers. "Leonardo!" Camilla's voice seemed to come from miles away. "What's wrong?" He couldn't answer. Sophia was walking toward him now, moving through the crowd as if in a dream. Time rewound and he was 20 again, promising to love her forever, swearing he'd return from his studies abroad, making plans for a future they would never have. "Leonardo?" Sophia said his name softly, standing before him now. Her voice was just as he remembered, melodic and warm. "Is it really you?" "Sophia," he managed to say, aware of Camilla's grip tightening on his arm. "I can't believe it." Sophia smiled. That same smile that had haunted his dreams for years after his parents had forced him to end things with her. "The world is smaller than we think," she said in Portuguese, their shared native language. "You know each other?" Camilla asked, switching from French to Portuguese, her voice sharp with suspicion. Leonardo finally looked at his wife. Her perfect features were arranged in a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "An old friend," he said inadequately, "from before university." Sophia extended her hand to Camilla. "Sophia Martins. Leonardo and I grew up in the same neighborhood, in Rio." "Camilla Alcantara," his wife replied, emphasizing their shared surname as she shook Sophia's hand. "Leonardo's wife." Sophia's smile didn't falter, but Leonardo saw the flicker in her eyes. "Of course, I've seen you both in magazines. Congratulations on your success. What brings you to Paris?" Leonardo asked, desperate to keep her there, to hear her voice again. "I'm a literature professor now. on sabbatical, doing research at the Sorbonne. She gestured to the bookstore behind her. And indulging my addiction to old books. How? Quaint, Camilla said, checking her diamond watch. Darling, we should continue. The night is getting cool. Leonardo felt torn in half. Where are you staying? He asked Sophia, ignoring the daggers Camilla was staring into him. A small apartment in the Latin Quarter. Nothing fancy. Sophia's eyes held his, and for a moment it was just the two of them, standing on that crowded Parisian street. It's good to see you, Leo. No one had called him Leo in years. The nickname felt like coming home. Perhaps we could have coffee, he suggested, feeling Camilla's nails dig into his arm. Catch up properly. I'd like that, Sophia said, then looked at Camilla. Both of you, of course. How lovely, Camilla said through a frozen smile. But we have such a packed schedule. Sophia nodded, understanding. She pulled a small notebook from her purse, scribbled something, and handed a page to Leonardo. My number, if you find time. Their fingers brushed as he took the paper, and electricity shot through him. I'll call you, he promised. As Sophia walked away, disappearing into the Parisian night, Leonardo felt something awaken inside him, something he thought had died long ago. An old friend. Camilla's voice was ice. You looked at her like she was water in a desert. It was a surprise, that's all, he said, tucking Sophia's number into his pocket. Don't lie to me, Camilla hissed, keeping her perfect smile in place as a couple walked past them. I know when a man is seeing a ghost. They walked back to their five-star hotel in silence. In their lavish suite, Camilla disappeared into the bathroom, emerging later in an expensive silk nightgown, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, yet somehow still perfect. Leonardo stood by the window, looking out at the Paris skyline, Sophia's number burning in his pocket. She was your lover, Camilla said. Not a question. We were very young, he admitted, before I met you, before my parents sent me to London. And clearly you never got over her. Camilla crossed the room to the minibar, pouring herself a vodka. I saw how you looked at her, Leonardo. In 10 years, you've never once looked at me that way. He couldn't deny it. Their marriage had been more merger than romance. The beautiful model and the wealthy businessman. A perfect match on paper. His parents had approved, society had applauded, and somewhere along the way he'd convinced himself it was enough. It was a long time ago, he said, turning from the window. And yet, here we are. Camilla drained her glass. In the city of love. And you're thinking of another woman. I'm sorry. Are you? She asked, her perfect face finally showing emotion, hurt, anger, pride. Because I don't think you are. I think you're sorry you married me instead of her. The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. He had buried his feelings for Sophia so deeply that he'd almost forgotten they existed. Almost. I made a choice, he said quietly. I've never been unfaithful to you. There are many ways to be unfaithful, Leonardo. Camilla set down her empty glass. What are you going to do now? It was a question he couldn't answer. Outside their window, Paris glittered with possibility. Somewhere in this vast city, Sophia was also looking at the same stars, perhaps thinking of him too. I don't know, he admitted. Camilla laughed bitterly. Well, that's the first honest thing you've said tonight. She climbed into bed, turning her back to him. Whatever you decide, don't make a fool of me. Leonardo stood at the window long after Camilla had fallen asleep. He held Sophia's number in his hand, staring at her handwriting. Still the same after all these years, slightly slanted, distinctive. He took out his phone, hesitated, then saved her number. Tomorrow, he would call her. Tomorrow, in the light of day, he would try to make sense of the feelings storming through him. Tomorrow he would have to choose between the life he had built and the love he had lost. But tonight, for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. Morning light streamed through the hotel suite's windows as Leonardo dressed for the day. He had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of Sophia. Camilla was already gone. A note on her pillow mentioned an early breakfast with a fashion designer friend, Leonardo knew what he was about to do crossed a line, but he couldn't stop himself. He took out Sophia's number and dialed before he could reconsider. "Hello?" Her voice sent a jolt through him. "Sophia, it's Leonardo." He paced the luxurious suite. "I was wondering if you'd meet me for coffee this morning." A brief pause. "Just you?" "Yes." The word felt like both a betrayal and a liberation. "Camilla has appointments today. There's a cafe near Shakespeare and Company bookstore. Do you know it?" "I'll find it," he promised. An hour later, Leonardo spotted Sophia at an outdoor table, reading a worn paperback. She wore a simple sundress and looked up as if sensing his presence. Her smile was just as he remembered, genuine, warm, reaching her eyes in a way Camilla's never did. "You came," she said as he sat across from her. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Leonardo asked. Sophia marked her page and closed her book. 15 years is a long time, Leo. People change. Some things don't, he said, looking into her eyes. The waiter came and they ordered espressos. When he left, an awkward silence fell between them. 15 years of unspoken words. "You look well," Sophia finally said. "Success suits you." "It should. I've sacrificed everything for it." The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. Sophia studied him. "Everything?" Leonardo sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "My father made it clear. Either I ended things with you and went to London, or he would cut me off completely. I was young, ambitious, and I was just the daughter of your family's housekeeper," Sophia finished for him. "Not the right pedigree for the Alcantara heir." "I was a coward," Leonardo admitted. "I should have fought for us." Their coffees arrived, and Sophia stirred a sugar cube into hers. "What would have happened if you had? No empire, no private jets, no supermodel wife. Would that have been so terrible?" He watched her stir her coffee, remembering how she always took it sweet. "We'll never know." Sophia looked up at him. "But you're here now, meeting me behind your wife's back." "Why, Leo?" The question hung in the air between them. Around them, tourists and locals enjoyed the Parisian morning, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing at their small table. "Because seeing you again made me realize what I've been missing," he said finally. "Life, passion, connection." Sophia shook her head. "You can't just waltz back into my life and say things like that." "I know." Leonardo reached across the table, taking her hand. "But I've never stopped thinking about you, Sophia. All these years, through my marriage, through building my company, you were always there in the back of my mind." Sophia didn't pull her hand away, but her eyes filled with cautious pain. "I waited for you, you know. For 2 years after you left for London. I thought you'd come back." The revelation hit Leonardo like a physical blow. "I didn't know." "How could you? You never called, never wrote. One day we were planning our future and the next you were gone." Sophia finally withdrew her hand. "I read about your engagement to Camilla in a magazine." Leonardo felt shame wash over him. "I wanted to contact you so many times, but I thought it would be selfish, reopening old wounds." "And now," Sophia challenged, "him. What's different now?" "Now I can't pretend anymore," Leonardo said. "Seeing you last night, it was like waking up from a 15-year sleep." Sophia glanced away, watching a young couple at a nearby table, laughing and feeding each other. "Pastries. We're not those young kids anymore, Leo. You have responsibilities, a life built with someone else. A life without love," he said quietly. Sophia's eyes snapped back to his. "That's a dangerous thing to say." "It's the truth." Leonardo leaned forward. "My marriage to Camilla was arranged in all but name. My parents approved, her career benefited from the Alcantara connection, and I got the perfect society wife. Everyone won, except our hearts." "And does Camilla feel the same way?" Leonardo hesitated. "Camilla loves what I provide, status, wealth, access. I'm not sure she ever loved me." "That sounds convenient for your conscience," Sophia observed, her tone gentle but pointed. Before Leonardo could respond, his phone rang. Camilla's name flashed. On the screen, he declined the call. "You should answer it," Sophia said. "I don't want this moment interrupted." Sophia smiled sadly. But it already has been. She gathered her book and purse. I have a research meeting at the university in 30 minutes. When can I see you again? Leonardo asked, desperation edging into his voice. Sophia stood looking down at him. Is that wise? Probably not, he admitted. But I need to see you again. After a long moment, Sophia nodded. There's a literary event at the Sorbonne tomorrow. Evening, a poetry reading. Very boring for someone like you, I'm sure. Text me the details, I'll be there. Sophia hesitated, then leaned down and kissed his cheek. Goodbye, Leo. He watched her walk away, the scent of her perfume lingering, not an expensive designer fragrance like Camilla's, but something simpler, more natural. He touched his cheek, where her lips had been. His phone rang again. Camilla. Where are you? She demanded when he answered. I've been trying to reach you. Just having coffee, thinking, he said vaguely. Well, think faster, Camilla said. The DuPont reception is at noon and you need to be there. Their shipping company is essential for the Asian expansion. Leonardo had completely forgotten about the business lunch. I'll meet you at the hotel in 20 minutes. Make it 10, Camilla said before hanging up. When Leonardo returned to the hotel, Camilla was already dressed in a stunning white designer suit, her hair and makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, which in fact she often was. You saw her, didn't you? Camilla asked without preamble. Leonardo considered lying, then thought better of it. Yes, Camilla nodded, her expression unreadable. I thought so. She adjusted her diamond earrings in the mirror. Did you sleep with her? Of course not, Leonardo said, shocked by the directness of the question. We just talked. About what? Old times? What might have been? Camilla turned to face him. Let me save you some time, darling. Whatever fantasy you're building in your head about this woman, it's just that. A fantasy. Leonardo loosened his tie. You don't know what Sophia and I had. Had. Past tense. Camilla crossed the room to him, straightening his tie with practiced fingers. We have built something real, Leonardo. A partnership, an empire. That's worth more than some romantic fantasy from your youth. Is it? Leonardo asked, meeting her eyes. We live like business partners, not husband and wife. A flash of hurt crossed Camilla's perfect features before she masked it. So this is about sex? Is that what you're missing? Because I can fix that. She pressed herself against him, her hands sliding down his chest. Leonardo gently pushed her away. It's not about sex. It's about connection. When was the last time we really talked? Shared our dreams, our fears? Camilla stepped back, her eyes cold. I didn't realize you married me for heart-to-heart conversations. I thought it was because I fit the image of what an Alcantara wife should be. Her words cut because they held truth. Maybe that's the problem, he said quietly. We don't have time for this, Camilla said, checking her watch. The DuPonts are waiting. Whatever midlife crisis you're having can wait until after we secure the shipping contract. Is that all you care about? Business deals? It's all you've cared about for years, Camilla shot back. Don't pretend this sudden interest in emotional fulfillment isn't because you bumped into an old flame. Leonardo had no answer for that. She was right, in her way. He had been content with their arrangement, or at least he had convinced himself he was, until seeing Sophia awakened dormant feelings. Let's go, he said finally. We shouldn't keep the DuPonts waiting. The business lunch was a blur. Leonardo made the right comments, laughed at the right moments, discussed shipping routes and tariffs with appropriate insight. But his mind was elsewhere, in a small cafe with a woman in a simple sundress. That evening, after a dinner with business associates where Camilla charmed everyone at the table, they returned to their hotel in silence. The tension between them filled the elevator as they ascended to their suite. I have a migraine, Camilla announced, once they were inside. I'm going to take a pill and sleep. Leonardo nodded, watching as she disappeared into the bathroom. When she emerged, she went straight to bed without another word. He sat on the balcony of their suite, looking out at the Paris skyline. His phone vibrated with a text message. Sophia. Poetry reading tomorrow, 7 p.m., Sorbonne University, room 305. Come if you want, but be sure it's what you really want. Leonardo stared at the message for a long time. Behind him, in their luxurious suite, his wife slept alone in their bed. Before him, the city of Paris sparkled with possibilities. He typed a response. "I'll be there." As he pressed send, Leonardo felt both exhilaration and fear. Tomorrow he would see Sophia again. Tomorrow he would take another step down a path that could destroy everything he had built. But for the first time in years he felt truly alive, and that feeling, dangerous as it was, seemed worth any risk. The next day passed in excruciating slowness for Leonardo. A morning of conference calls with his executive team in Brazil, a lunch meeting with European investors, and an afternoon touring potential office spaces for Alcantara Industries' Paris branch. Through it all, his thoughts kept drifting to Sophia and the evening ahead. Camilla had been coolly professional with him since their argument, playing her role as the devoted wife in public, but barely speaking to him in private. She had her own schedule for the day. A private showing at an exclusive boutique, lunch with fashion industry contacts, a photo shoot for a French luxury magazine. At 5 o'clock, Leonardo sat in their hotel suite, watching Camilla prepare for an industry dinner. "You're not coming tonight?" she asked, applying her lipstick with precision. Her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "I have a business meeting," Leonardo lied, hating himself for it. Camilla's eyes met his in the mirror. "With whom?" "Potential investors," he said. The lies were coming easier now, which disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. How convenient. Camilla capped her lipstick. "And does this investor happen to have chestnut hair and wear simple blue dresses?" Leonardo felt his face flush. "Camilla, spare me." She turned to face him. "Do you think I'm stupid, Leonardo? Do you think I don't know exactly where you're going tonight? It's just a poetry reading," he said weakly. Camilla laughed, a brittle sound. "Of course, because the CEO of Alcantara Industries has suddenly developed a passion for poetry." She shook her head. "At least have the decency to be honest with me." Leonardo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I need to see her again." "Why?" Camilla demanded. "What can she possibly give you that I can't?" "It's not about what she can give me," Leonardo tried to explain. "It's about how I feel when I'm with her." "And how do you feel?" "Alive," he said simply. "Like myself." Camilla's perfect features hardened. "And with me you feel... what? Dead? A prisoner?" "That's not fair," Leonardo protested, though her words had hit uncomfortably close to home. "None of this is fair," Camilla said, gathering her evening clutch. "I have played my part perfectly for 10 years, Leonardo. The devoted wife, the elegant hostess, the sophisticated partner who never embarrasses you, never asks too much, never causes problems." Her voice cracked slightly. "And now you're throwing it all away for a woman who couldn't even keep you the first time around." The cruelty of her words shocked him. "That's not what happened, isn't it?" Camilla raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "She wasn't enough to make you defy your parents. Then, what makes you think she's worth destroying our life now?" Leonardo had no answer. The question cut too deep, exposed too many of his own doubts. "Go to your poetry reading," Camilla said, walking to the door. "But remember what's waiting for you. Here, remember what we've built." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "And remember, Leonardo, that I know how to fight for what's mine." The door closed, behind her with a soft click that somehow felt more threatening than a slam. Leonardo sat for a long time, Camilla's words echoing in his mind. Was he being selfish, throwing away a decade of marriage for a romantic fantasy? Maybe Sophia wouldn't even want him anymore once she knew the real Leonardo, no longer the passionate young man she'd loved, but a hardened businessman who had sacrificed his own happiness for success. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Are you still coming?" Leonardo stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the screen. He could end this now. Go back to his comfortable, if loveless, life with Camilla. Continue building his empire. Forget Sophia again. But even as he considered it, he knew he couldn't. Not now. not after seeing her again. "On my way," he texted back. The Sorbonne's historic buildings were awash in golden evening light as Leonardo arrived. He felt oddly out of place in his expensive suit among the students and professors in casual clothes. He found room 305 and slipped inside, taking a seat at the back. The room was half full, with about 30 people scattered among the seats. At the front, a middle-aged professor was introducing the evening's featured poet. Leonardo scanned the audience, his heart sinking when he didn't see Sophia. Then, the door opened beside him, and she slipped in, slightly breathless. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "You came," she whispered, taking the seat next to him. "I said I would," Leonardo replied quietly. Sophia smiled, and Leonardo felt that same jolt of connection. She wore a simple green dress tonight, her hair pulled back in a loose bun with a few strands framing her face. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry, just Sophia, natural and beautiful. The poet began reading, something in French about lost, love and second chances. Leonardo didn't follow all of it, his French being primarily business-focused, but the emotion in the poet's voice transcended language barriers. Beside him, Sophia listened intently, occasionally nodding or smiling at particular passages. Leonardo found himself watching her more than the poet, the way her eyes lit up at certain lines, how she unconsciously mouthed words she particularly liked, the slight furrow in her brow when she concentrated. All these small gestures he had once known so well, now rediscovered. When the reading ended and applause filled the room, Sophia turned to him. "What did you think?" "Beautiful," Leonardo said, meaning her more than the poetry. Sophia laughed softly. "You didn't understand most of it, did you?" "Not the words," he admitted, "but I understood the feeling." They joined the small crowd moving toward a table with wine and cheese at the back of the room. Sophia greeted several colleagues, introducing Leonardo simply as an old friend from Brazil. No one seemed to recognize him as the business magnate. His face in financial magazines had made him. It was refreshing to be just Leonardo, not Alcantara Industries' CEO. "Would you like to go for a walk?" Sophia asked after they'd spent a polite amount of time at the reception. "The Seine is beautiful at night." They strolled along the riverbank, Paris lighting up around them as darkness fell. Street lamps cast golden pools on the walkway, and boats with twinkling lights glided past on the water. "I keep expecting to wake up," Sophia said, as they leaned against a stone wall overlooking the river. "To find this was all a dream and you're still gone." Leonardo looked at her profile, illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights. "I'm really here, but for how long?" Sophia turned to face him. "You go back to Brazil in what, a week? 2? And then what, Leo?" It was the question he'd been avoiding. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just know I can't walk away from you again." "You have a wife," Sophia reminded him. "A marriage in name only. That's still a marriage." Sophia sighed. "I'm not a homewrecker, Leo. I won't be your Paris fling." "Is that what you think this is?" Leonardo asked, hurt by her characterization. "What else can it be?" Sophia challenged him. "You have a life built with someone else, companies that depend on you, responsibilities." "I could leave it all," he said suddenly. "Start over." Sophia stared at him. "You don't mean that." "I think I do." The idea had formed in his mind even as he spoke it. "What good is all of it if I'm not happy?" "And what about Camilla?" Sophia asked. "Does her happiness matter in this equation?" Leonardo fell silent. He hadn't truly considered Camilla's feelings beyond her anger and sense of betrayal. Did she love him, really love him? Or was she, as he suspected, more attached to the lifestyle and status he provided? "Camilla will be fine," he said finally. "She's resilient, and she'd get a generous settlement." "You make it sound so simple," Sophia said. "Breaking vows, dividing assets, walking away from a decade of your life." "Maybe it is simple," Leonardo argued. "Maybe we make things complicated because we're afraid to follow our hearts." Sophia laughed softly. "You sound like the poet tonight. All romance, no practicality. Is that so bad?" He stepped closer to her. "Sophia, when I saw you outside that bookstore, it was like the last 15 years disappeared. Like I was being given a second chance." At what? She challenged him. At happiness, at love, at a life that means something beyond balance sheets and business deals. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the lights of Paris. And what? If it doesn't work out, what if we've both built this moment into something it can't possibly be? Then at least we tried, Leonardo said. At least we didn't let fear stop us again. The space between them seemed to vibrate with possibility. Leonardo leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that felt both new and achingly familiar. Sophia's hands came up to rest on his chest, and Leonardo gently cradled her face. The kiss deepened, years of separation and longing pouring into this one moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I never stopped loving you," Leonardo whispered. "Even when I tried to forget you, even when I married someone else, it was always you, Sophia." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I tried so hard to hate you when you left. It would have been easier." "I'm sorry," he said, stroking her cheek. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me." Sophia stepped back slightly. "This is happening too fast, Leo. A few days ago, you were just a memory from my past. Now you're talking about leaving your wife, abandoning your company." "Not abandoning," he corrected. "I can run Alcantara Industries from anywhere, or sell my controlling interest. Money isn't an issue." "It's not about money," Sophia said. "It's about making life-altering decisions in the heat of emotion. We need time to think, to be sure." Leonardo knew she was right, but his heart rebelled against any delay. "How much time?" "Give me a week," Sophia said. "Give yourself a week. If you still feel the same way then, if you're truly ready to change your life for us, we can talk about the future." A week seemed an eternity, but Leonardo nodded. "1 week. But I know my feelings won't change." Sophia smiled sadly. "You thought that 15 years ago too." Her words hit him like a physical blow. "That was different. I was young, afraid of disappointing my family. Now I know what matters." "I hope so," Sophia said. She leaned up and kissed him again briefly. "1 week, Leo. Go home to your hotel. Think about what you really want." They parted at the entrance to the metro station, Sophia refusing his offer of a taxi. Leonardo watched her descend the stairs, feeling as though a piece of himself was walking away with her. When he returned to the hotel, the suite was dark and silent. Camilla had not returned from her dinner yet. Leonardo poured himself a brandy and went out to the balcony, looking over the city where his past and present had collided so unexpectedly. His phone rang, an unknown number with a Paris area code. "Hello?" he answered. "Mr. Alcantara." A woman's voice, professional, speaking English with a French accent. "This is Hôpital Saint-Louis. I'm calling about your wife." Leonardo's blood ran cold. "My wife? What's happened?" "There's been an accident, a car collision. She's been brought to our emergency department." "Is she—" Leonardo couldn't finish the question. "She's in surgery now. You should come quickly." Leonardo was already grabbing his jacket. "I'm on my way," as he rushed out of the hotel, flagging. Down a taxi, the evening's events suddenly seemed surreal. One moment he had been kissing Sophia, planning a new life together. The next, racing to a hospital where Camilla fought for her life. Whatever their problems, whatever his feelings for Sophia, Camilla was still his wife. He had made vows to her, and now, faced with the possibility of losing her, Leonardo wondered if he had been about to make a terrible mistake. The hospital corridors seemed endless as Leonardo followed a nurse through the sterile white labyrinth. The antiseptic smell, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on polished floors, the hushed voices, everything intensified his sense of unreality. "Your wife is out of surgery," the doctor explained when Leonardo arrived, his face grave beneath his surgical cap. "The impact was severe. She has multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a head injury that concerns us most." "Will she—" Leonardo's voice caught. "Will she recover?" The doctor's expression remained carefully neutral. "The next 24 hours are critical. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling." "Can I see her?" Leonardo asked. "Briefly. She's in intensive care." Nothing could have prepared Leonardo for the sight of Camilla in that hospital bed. His always perfect wife now lay broken and pale, tubes snaking from her arms, a ventilator breathing for her, her beautiful face swollen and bruised beyond recognition. A machine beeped steadily beside her, the only reassurance that she still lived. "Camilla," he whispered, taking her limp hand. Her fingers were cold, her manicure still flawless, a jarring contrast to her broken body. Leonardo sank into the chair, beside her bed, still clutching her hand. What had happened? The nurse had mentioned a car accident, but details were sparse. A soft knock on the door drew his attention. A police officer stood there, looking sympathetic. "Monsieur Alcantara." "I'm Officer Durand. May I speak with you about your wife's accident?" Leonardo nodded numbly, following the officer to a small waiting area nearby. "We're still investigating," Officer Durand explained, "but it appears your wife's taxi was struck by a delivery truck that ran a red light. The driver claims his brakes failed, but tests are being conducted. The taxi driver, minor injuries only, thankfully. He was wearing his seatbelt. It seems Madame Alcantara was not." Leonardo closed his eyes. Camilla never wore seatbelts in taxis. She claimed they wrinkled her clothes. "There is something else," the officer said, his tone shifting slightly. "The taxi was not heading toward your hotel. According to the driver, Madame Alcantara asked to be taken to an address in the Latin Quarter." Leonardo's eyes snapped open. "The Latin Quarter?" "Yes, an apartment building on Rue Mouffetard. Sophia lived in the Latin Quarter." A cold feeling settled in Leonardo's stomach. "Do you know why your wife would be going there?" the officer asked. "No," Leonardo answered honestly. "She was supposed to be at a business dinner." The officer nodded, making a note. "We found this in her purse." He handed Leonardo a folded piece of paper. "It appears to be an address." Leonardo opened it and felt his blood run cold. It was Sophia's address, written in Camilla's elegant handwriting. Beside it was a note. "The homewrecker." "Is this significant?" Officer Durand asked, watching Leonardo's reaction. I'm not sure," Leonardo stammered. "My wife had many appointments in Paris." The officer seemed skeptical, but didn't press. "We'll continue our investigation. Please call if you think of anything that might be relevant." When the officer left, Leonardo sat alone in the waiting room, the paper clutched in his hand. Camilla had been going to confront Sophia. Perhaps she had followed him to the poetry reading, seen them together. The thought made him sick with guilt. Was this accident somehow his fault? He pulled out his phone, hesitating before texting Sophia. "Camilla's been in an accident. She's in intensive care. I'll be at the hospital." Sophia's response came almost immediately. "Oh my God, is she going to be okay?" "They don't know yet. Critical condition." "I'm so sorry, Leo. Do you want me to come?" Leonardo stared at her message. Part of him desperately wanted Sophia's comfort, but he knew it would be inappropriate, possibly even cruel to Camilla. "No, I need to be here alone. I'll call when I know more." "I understand. I'm here if you need." Fast Leonardo returned to Camilla's room, resuming his vigil beside her bed. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking machines, adjusting IVs. Leonardo made necessary calls to Camilla's parents in Brazil, to his assistant to cancel appointments, to their hotel to extend their stay indefinitely. Dawn was breaking when his phone rang. Camilla's mother, hysterical despite the sedative her doctor had prescribed. "We're taking the first flight," she sobbed. "My baby girl, my beautiful Camilla." "The doctors are doing everything they can," Leonardo assured her, though the words felt hollow. "This would never have happened at home," his mother-in-law accused. "Paris, I told her that city was dangerous." After calming her as best he could, Leonardo hung up and rubbed his tired eyes. Coffee, he needed coffee to keep going. Rising stiffly from the uncomfortable chair, he went in search of the hospital cafeteria. As he waited in line, Leonardo's phone buzzed with another text from Sophia. "Any news? I couldn't sleep all night thinking about you and Camilla." The simple message brought tears to his eyes, the first he'd shed since arriving at the hospital. He typed back, "No change, still in induced coma." "Do you need anything? Food? Clean clothes?" Leonardo realized he was still wearing yesterday's suit, now rumpled and stained. "I'm fine, thank you for asking." He put his phone away, collected his coffee, and headed back to Camilla's room. As he approached, he saw a doctor and several nurses hurrying inside. His heart lurched and he broke into a run. "What's happening?" he demanded, coffee forgotten as he reached the doorway. "Her intracranial pressure is rising," a nurse explained, moving him aside. "The doctor is checking if we need to intervene." Leonardo watched helplessly as they worked on Camilla, adjusting equipment, administering medications. Finally, the doctor stepped back. "We've stabilized her for now," he told Leonardo, "but we may need to operate again if the pressure doesn't decrease." "What does that mean for her recovery?" Leonardo asked. The doctor's face was solemn. "Mr. Alcantara, I must be honest with you. Your wife's injuries are extremely severe. If she survives, there may be significant neurological damage." The blunt assessment hit Leonardo like a physical blow. "If she survives," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. We're doing everything possible, but you should prepare yourself for difficult decisions ahead." When the doctor left, Leonardo collapsed into the chair beside Camilla's bed, taking her hand once more. "I'm here, Camilla," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you." The words felt like a vow, one he intended to keep regardless of his feelings for Sophia. Whatever problems existed in their marriage, whatever love he still harbored for Sophia, he couldn't abandon Camilla now. Days blurred together. Leonardo rarely left the hospital, sleeping in the chair beside Camilla's bed, showering in the family facilities down the hall, eating from the cafeteria when hospital staff insisted. Sophia texted daily, but he responded less and less, unable to reconcile his feelings for her with his duty to Camilla. On the third day, Camilla's parents arrived from Brazil, bringing with them an entourage of specialists who conferred with the French doctors. Their presence was both a relief and a new stress for Leonardo. This would never have happened in Rio. Ricardo Duarte, Camilla's father, muttered repeatedly as they stood outside her room. A successful businessman himself, he had never quite accepted that his daughter had married into a family he considered rivals. What was she even doing in that part of the city? Leonardo avoided the question, unsure how much Camilla's parents knew about their marital problems. The police are still investigating the accident. Helena Duarte, Camilla's mother, barely left her daughter's bedside, alternating between tearful prayers and angry outbursts at the hospital staff. She had always been protective of Camilla, her only child, and had never quite warmed to Leonardo despite the advantageous match. "She looks so small," Helena whispered on the fifth day, stroking Camilla's hair. "My beautiful girl." Leonardo stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed. The doctors had begun reducing Camilla's sedation, hoping she would show signs of waking. So far, there had been no response. "I need some air," he said finally, unable to bear the suffocating atmosphere of the hospital room any longer. Outside, the Parisian summer evening was warm and fragrant. Leonardo walked aimlessly, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions, guilt over his feelings for Sophia, concern for Camilla, resentment at the interruption, of his brief happiness and disgust at himself for that very resentment. His phone rang. "Sophia, Leo." Her voice was tentative. "I haven't heard from you in 2 days. I've been worried." "I'm sorry," he said, realizing he had indeed neglected to respond to her messages. "It's been difficult here." "How is she?" "The same. They're reducing her sedation, hoping for signs of consciousness." "And you? How are you holding up?" Leonardo sighed, leaning against a tree in the small park across from the hospital. "I don't know anymore. Camilla's parents are here. They're challenging." "I can only imagine." Sophia paused. "Leo, I don't want to add to your burden, but I need to know where we stand." It was the question he had been avoiding. "Sophia, I can't think about that right now. Camilla needs me." "I understand that," Sophia said gently. "But our week is almost up, and I need to know if you were serious about us having a future." Leonardo closed his eyes, torn between his heart and his conscience. "I meant everything I said to you, but now, with Camilla injured, possibly dying, how can I walk away?" "You can't," Sophia agreed. "I wouldn't want you to." "Then what are you asking me?" "I'm asking for honesty, Leo. Are you staying with Camilla out of love or obligation?" The question struck at the heart of his confusion. "Does it matter?" The result is the same. It matters to me, Sophia said quietly. I've spent 15 years trying to forget you. If I'm going to wait again, I need to know it's for something real, not just your guilt. Leonardo had no answer that wouldn't hurt her or betray Camilla. I need more time, he said finally. How much time, Leo? Another 15 years. That's not fair, he protested. None of this is fair, Sophia said, echoing Camilla's words from days. Fargo. Not to you, not to Camilla, and certainly not to me. But we're adults, Leo. We make difficult choices and live with the consequences. Leonardo knew she was right. What do you want me to do? I want you to be honest. With Camilla, with yourself, and with me. Even if the truth hurts everyone? Especially then, Sophia said. Lies have already cost us 15 years. Don't let them cost us the rest of our lives. After they hung up, Leonardo remained in the park, watching as hospital staff changed shifts. Visitors came and went, and the sky deepened from blue to purple to black. Sophia's words echoed in his mind. Honesty. He had been dishonest for so long, with Camilla about his lingering feelings for Sophia, with Sophia about his willingness to leave his marriage, with himself about what he truly wanted. When he finally returned to the hospital, he found Camilla's room in an uproar. Where have you been? Helena demanded, her eyes wild. She opened her eyes. She's trying to wake up. Leonardo pushed past her to Camilla's bedside. Indeed, her eyelids were fluttering, her fingers twitching. The doctor says it's a good sign, Ricardo said, his usual gruffness softened by hope. Leonardo took Camilla's hand. Camilla, can you hear me? It's Leonardo. Her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around his. She squeezed my hand, he said, his voice breaking. She can hear me. The doctor arrived moments later, checking Camilla's responses, shining lights in her eyes, asking her to squeeze hands or wiggle toes if she could hear him. Each small response brought tears to Helena's eyes and cautious optimism to the doctor's face. These are promising signs, he told them, but we must be patient. Recovery from brain injuries is a slow process, and we still don't know the extent of the damage. That night, Leonardo kept vigil alone, having convinced Camilla's parents to get some rest at the hotel. He held his wife's hand, watching her face for any sign of consciousness. Near dawn, her eyes opened fully for the first time. Those familiar blue eyes, now clouded with confusion and pain. Camilla, he whispered, can you hear me? She looked at him, blinked slowly, then whispered through parched lips, Sophia. Leonardo froze. Had she said what he thought she said? Camilla, it's me, Leonardo. Your husband. Her eyes held his, a spark of her old intelligence visible despite the medications. And trauma. You were with Sophia. The accusation, weak as it was, hit him like a slap. Camilla, don't try to talk. You need to rest. But her hand tightened on his with surprising strength. I saw you at university. Leonardo's heart sank. She had followed him to the poetry reading, had seen him with Sophia. We can talk about this later, he said, when you're stronger. No, Camilla insisted, each word clearly an effort. Now. Truth. Faced with her determination, Leonardo remembered Sophia's words about honesty. Perhaps it was time. Yes, he admitted quietly. I saw Sophia while you were at your dinner. Camilla closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. Going to confront her, she whispered. The accident. I know, Leonardo said, guilt washing over him. The police found Sophia's address in your purse. Camilla, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Camilla's eyes opened again, surprisingly clear. My choice, she said. My mistake. Her words absolved him, though he knew he didn't deserve it. Rest now, he urged. We can talk when you're stronger. Camilla's eyes drifted closed, but her grip on his hand remained firm. Don't leave, she murmured. I won't, he promised, knowing she meant more than just that moment. As Camilla slipped back into sleep, Leonardo texted Sophia one-handed, unwilling to release Camilla's hand. Camilla woke up. She knows about us. I can't leave her now. Sophia's response came quickly. "I understand. Take care of her, Leo." The simplicity of her message broke his heart. No arguments, no pleas, just acceptance of what they both knew was the only possible choice. Leonardo gently squeezed Camilla's hand, watching her sleep. Whatever their marriage had been before, whatever it might become after her recovery, he had made a vow to stand by her in sickness and in health. This was his duty, his responsibility. But as dawn broke over Paris, casting golden light through the hospital window, Leonardo wondered if duty alone was enough to build a life upon, and whether, in choosing obligation over love, he was making the same mistake all over again. 2 weeks after the accident, Camilla was transferred from intensive care to a private room. Her progress had been steady, but slow. She could speak in short sentences now, feed herself with some assistance, and even sit up in bed for limited periods. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about her physical recovery, though they warned that the full extent of her cognitive abilities might not be known for months. Leonardo had moved into a furnished apartment near the hospital, having extended their stay in Paris indefinitely. He divided his time between Camilla's bedside, video conferences with his executive team in Brazil, and occasional escapes to nearby cafes when the hospital walls began closing in. He hadn't seen Sophia since before the accident. They had exchanged a few brief text messages, but Leonardo had made it clear that his priority was Camilla's recovery. Sophia had respected his decision, though her last message, "I'll always care for you, Leo," haunted him during sleepless nights. "You look terrible," Camilla observed one morning as Leonardo entered her room with coffee and croissants. Her speech was slow but clearer now, each day bringing improvement. The bruises on her face had faded to yellowish shadows, and her hair was growing back where they had shaved it for surgery. "Good morning to you too," Leonardo replied with a wry smile, setting the breakfast on her tray. "You need sleep," she insisted, studying him with those sharp blue eyes that had lost none of their perceptiveness despite her injuries. "I'm fine," he assured her, taking his usual seat beside her bed. Camilla picked at her croissant. "No, you're not. You're miserable." Leonardo sighed. Since waking from her coma, Camilla had developed a directness that was both refreshing and uncomfortable. The brain injury had stripped away some of her carefully constructed social filters, leaving her more likely to speak uncomfortable truths. "I'm concerned about you," he deflected. "That's all." "Liar," Camilla said without heat. "You're thinking about her." They had not discussed Sophia since that first night Camilla had awakened. Leonardo had deliberately avoided the subject, and Camilla had seemed content to focus on her recovery. Until now. "Camilla, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Leonardo?" Her hand trembled slightly as she set down her coffee cup. "When I'm completely recovered, when we're back in Brazil. Never." Leonardo shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to upset you. The doctors said emotional stress could set back your recovery." "Not. Knowing what's happening in my marriage is more stressful," Camilla countered. "I'm injured, not stupid." Leonardo met her gaze. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth. For once." Camilla adjusted herself higher on her pillows, wincing slightly at the movement. "You were going to leave me for her, weren't you? Before the accident." The bluntness of her question left no room for evasion. "I was considering it," he admitted quietly. Camilla nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "And now? Now I'm here, with you. Out of guilt? Obligation?" Leonardo ran a hand through his hair. "Does it matter why? It matters to me." Camilla's words echoed Sophia's from weeks ago. Both women wanted the same thing from him. Honesty. "I made vows to you," Leonardo said. "For better or worse, in sickness and in health, I intend to honor those vows." "That's not what I asked." Camilla's voice was soft but insistent. "Do you love me, Leonardo? Did you ever?" The question hung in the air between them, demanding an answer he wasn't sure he had. "I care about you deeply," he said finally. "I respect you. I admire your strength, especially now. But you don't love me. Not the way you love her." It wasn't a question. and Leonardo didn't treat it as one. They sat in silence for a long moment, the truth finally acknowledged between them. "You know," Camilla said eventually, "I always knew there was someone. From the beginning of our marriage, you never talked about her, but sometimes I'd catch you, looking at nothing, lost in thought, and I knew you were thinking about someone else." Leonardo was surprised by her perception. "Why did you stay?" "Same reasons you did. Family expectations, social standing." She smiled ruefully. "And hope, I suppose. Hope that one day you might look at me the way you looked at her on that street in Paris." Shame washed over Leonardo. "I'm sorry, Camilla. I tried to be a good husband." "You were," she assured him. "On paper, anyway. The perfect businessman, the perfect provider, the perfect escort at social functions." Her voice held no bitterness, just resignation. "We had a transaction, not a marriage." "That's not entirely fair," Leonardo protested. "Isn't it?" Camilla challenged him. "Be honest, Leonardo. If not for my accident, you would be with her right now." He couldn't deny it. "Probably. Definitely," Camilla corrected him. She reached for her water glass, and Leonardo automatically helped her, supporting her still weak hand. "And that's why you need to go." Leonardo stared at her. "What?" "Go to her," Camilla said, her eyes clear and determined. "I release you from your obligation to me. Camilla, I'm not abandoning you while you're recovering from a near-fatal accident. It's not abandonment if I'm sending you away." Camilla's voice strengthened. "Leonardo, I've had a lot of time to think in this hospital bed. Nearly dying puts things in perspective." "What perspective?" "That life is too short to live without love." She set her water glass down carefully. "I don't want your pity or your guilt or your sense of duty. I want someone who loves me the way you love her." Leonardo was stunned by her words. "You deserve that," he agreed softly. "Yes, I do," Camilla said with a flash of her old confidence. "And so do you. So does she. But your recovery. My parents are here. I have the best doctors, the best care. I don't need you holding my hand out of guilt." Leonardo studied her face, searching for signs that this was a test or manipulation. He found none, just a tired woman speaking her truth. "What would we tell people?" he asked, his mind already considering practical concerns. Camilla laughed softly. "Always the businessman, thinking of appearances. Tell them whatever you want. That the accident gave us both new perspective, that we've grown apart, that it's amicable." "Is it?" Leonardo asked. "Amicable?" Camilla's smile held a touch of sadness. "Let's say it's honest." "Finally." Leonardo took her hand gently. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," she said. "But we've been hurting each other for years by pretending." They sat in silence for a long moment, both processing the end of their decade-long marriage. "There's something else you should know," Camilla said finally. "Something I never told. You..." Leonardo looked at her questioningly. "6 years ago, I had an affair." The revelation shocked him. Camilla, proper, image-conscious Camilla, had been unfaithful? "Antonio Vega," she continued. "My photographer during the Milano campaign." Leonardo vaguely remembered a handsome, artistic man who had photographed Camilla for a major fashion spread. "How long?" 3 months. Passionate, intense, secret. Camilla's eyes took on a faraway look. "He made me feel beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with my face or body. He saw me, the real me." "Why did it end?" Camilla's expression hardened slightly. "Your mother found out, threatened to ruin his career, reminded me of my obligations as an Alcantara wife." Leonardo felt a surge of anger at his mother's interference, though he recognized the hypocrisy given his own recent actions. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would it have mattered?" Camilla asked. "Would it have changed anything between us?" He couldn't honestly say it would have. Their marriage had been operating on autopilot for years by that point. "I'm telling you now because I want you to understand," Camilla continued. "I know what it's like to love someone you can't have, to choose duty over passion. I don't want that for either of us anymore." "What will you do?" Leonardo asked. "After your recovery." "Live," Camilla said simply. "Really live, for perhaps the First time, she smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. Maybe I'll call Antonio, maybe not. But I'll decide for myself, not based on what my parents or society or the Alcantara name demands. Leonardo felt something shift between them, respect, understanding, perhaps even the beginnings of genuine friendship. I'll need time to make arrangements, he said, for your continued care, for the legal aspects. Of course, Camilla agreed. I'm not suggesting you walk out of this room and never look back. We'll need to be practical. And your parents? Camilla grimaced. Leave them to me. They won't be happy, but they'll accept it eventually, especially when I tell them it was my decision. Was it? Leonardo asked softly. Really? Camilla met his eyes steadily. Yes. I could fight for you, Leonardo. Use my injuries to guilt you into staying. Play the victim. But what kind of life would that be for either of us? Her maturity and clarity surprised him. The accident had changed Camilla in ways he was only beginning to understand. Thank you, he said simply, squeezing her hand. Don't waste this chance, she told him. 15 years is long enough to wait for happiness, don't you think? As Leonardo left the hospital that day, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. The guilt and confusion that had weighed him down were replaced by a cautious hope. He stood on the street, breathing in the Parisian summer air, and pulled out his phone. Sophia answered on the second ring. Leo? Can we meet? He asked. There's something I need to tell you. Is everything okay, Camilla? Camilla is improving, he assured her. This is about us. There was a pause. The cafe near Shakespeare and Company? In an hour? I'll be there. Leonardo arrived early, securing a table in the corner where they had sat weeks ago when he had first told Sophia he still loved her. So much had happened since then, so much pain, so much truth. He saw her before she saw him. She wore a simple yellow sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous, scanning the cafe until their eyes met. The smile that blossomed on her face made his heart skip. Leo, she said, sitting across from him. You look tired. It's been an intense few weeks, he admitted. Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes. How is Camilla doing? Better every day. The doctors are optimistic. I'm glad, Sophia said, and Leonardo could tell she meant it. There was no jealousy, no resentment in her voice. Camilla and I had a long talk today, Leonardo began, unsure how to express everything that had happened. Sophia's face grew serious. I see. She's releasing me from our marriage, he said simply. Sophia's eyes widened. What? Leonardo explained their conversation, Camilla's surprising revelations, and her decision to end their marriage. That's incredibly generous of her, Sophia said when he finished. She's a remarkable woman, Leonardo agreed. Far stronger and more insightful than I gave her credit for. And what do you want, Leo? Sophia asked, reaching across to take his hand. Not what Camilla wants, not what I want. What do you want? Leonardo looked at their entwined hands, then up at Sophia's face. The face that had haunted his dreams for 15 years. I want a second chance, he said. With you, if you'll have me. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? This isn't guilt or obligation talking. I've had enough of guilt and obligation, Leonardo said firmly. For the first time in my adult life, I'm making a choice based solely on love. Sophia squeezed his hand, her smile radiant through her tears. Then yes, Leo, yes to our second chance. As they sat in that Parisian cafe, hands clasped across the table, Leonardo felt a peace he hadn't known in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Divorces never were, especially for high-profile couples like him and Camilla. There would be gossip, legal complications, business considerations. But looking at Sophia, seeing the love in her eyes that had somehow survived 15 years of separation, Leonardo knew they would face it all together. In the city of light, he had found his way out of darkness. In the city of love, he had found his way back to his heart's true home. The next month brought changes that Leonardo could never have anticipated when he first arrived in Paris with Camilla. He had rented a small apartment in the Latin Quarter, not far from Sophia's place. The modest two-bedroom space was nothing like the luxury hotels and penthouses he typically occupied, but he found its simplicity refreshing. Most of his days were still spent at the hospital with Camilla, overseeing her care and working with her doctors to develop a rehabilitation plan. Their relationship had shifted into something unexpected, a genuine friendship built on newfound honesty. "You don't need to come every day," Camilla told him one afternoon as he helped her practice walking with her physical therapist. Her steps were slow and unsteady, but she improved with each session. "I want to," Leonardo replied, supporting her elbow as she carefully placed one foot in front of the other. The physical therapist smiled approvingly. "Madame Alcantara has made remarkable progress. The brain is resilient, especially in someone so determined. She's always been stubborn," Leonardo said with affection. Camilla shot him a look. "Determined," she corrected. "The word is determined." After the therapy session, they sat in the hospital garden enjoying the late summer sunshine. Camilla was dressed in silk pajamas rather than a hospital gown, a small concession to her dignity that her mother had insisted upon. "I spoke with the lawyers yesterday," Leonardo said, handing Camilla a cup of tea. "And?" She sipped carefully, her hands still not entirely steady. "They've drawn up the preliminary divorce agreement. Everything we discussed, the property division, the financial settlements. Once you're feeling stronger, you can review it with your own attorney." Camilla nodded. "My parents will insist on that." "How are they taking it?" Leonardo asked. Camilla's expression turned rueful. "How do you think? Mother alternates between tears and rage. Father threatens to ruin you." "The usual then." "They'll adjust," Camilla said with surprising confidence. "Especially when they see I'm happier." "Are you?" Leonardo asked. "Happier?" Camilla considered the question seriously. "Yes," she said finally. "It's strange, but yes, there's something liberating about nearly dying. It clarifies what matters." Leonardo understood completely. He felt the same clarity in his relationship with Sophia. They were taking things slowly, spending evenings together, talking, rediscovering each other. There was a purity to their connection now. No sneaking around, no guilt, just two people building something honest together. "And Sophia?" Camilla asked, always direct now. "You're happy with her?" "I am," Leonardo admitted. "It feels right." Camilla smiled, only a trace of sadness in her eyes. "Then I made the right decision." As they sat in companionable silence, a nurse approached with a phone. "Madame Alcantara, there's a call for you." Camilla looked surprised but took the phone. "Hello?" Her eyes widened. "Antonio?" Leonardo raised his eyebrows but stood to give her privacy. He walked to the edge of the garden, giving Camilla space while she spoke animatedly into the phone. When she finished, her cheeks were flushed with more color than he'd seen since the accident. "Antonio Vega," she explained when Leonardo returned. "He heard about my accident." "Your photographer friend," Leonardo said neutrally. Camilla didn't bother denying the implication. "He's in Rome, says he might come to Paris to see me. And would you like that?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe. It's been years." "You deserve happiness, Camilla," Leonardo said sincerely, whatever form that takes. She studied him with her perceptive gaze. "We're actually going to be friends, aren't we?" "Who would have thought?" Leonardo laughed. "Certainly not our parents." The mention of parents reminded Leonardo of another difficult conversation awaiting him. He had been avoiding telling his own parents about the impending divorce, knowing they would be furious. The Alcantara-Duarte marriage had been as much a business merger as a romantic union, with significant financial entanglements between the families. That evening, when Leonardo arrived at Sophia's apartment for dinner, she immediately sensed his distraction. "What's wrong?" she asked, putting down the cookbook she'd been studying. "I need to call my parents," he said, slumping onto her comfortable but worn sofa. "Tell them about the divorce." Sophia sat beside him, taking his hand. "Do you want me to give you privacy?" "No," Leonardo said firmly. "I want you with me. They need to understand that this is real." Sophia nodded, though he could see nervousness in her eyes. The last time she had encountered the Alcantara family had been 15 years ago. When they had made their disapproval of her abundantly clear, Leonardo dialed his father's number, putting the call on speaker phone. "Leonardo, Victor Alcantara," answered, his voice curt. "Finally. Your assistant keeps telling us you're unavailable. Since when are you unavailable to your own parents?" "Hello, father," Leonardo said, squeezing Sophia's hand. "I have something important to discuss with you and mother." "Is it about Camila?" "Helena Duarte called your mother in hysterics yesterday." "Something about divorce?" "We assumed it was the medication making Camila confused." Leonardo took a deep breath. "It's not confusion, father. Camila and I are divorcing. It's mutual and amicable." The silence on the other end was deafening, followed by the sound of another extension being picked up. "Leonardo." His mother's voice now joined the call. "What is this nonsense? Camila has suffered brain trauma. She's not in her right mind, and you're taking advantage of this to what? Abandon her?" "Camila is remarkably lucid, mother," Leonardo countered. "And this decision is as much hers as mine." "Impossible," Victor declared. "This would never happen if you were home in Rio where you belong. Paris has always been a bad influence on you." Sophia shifted uncomfortably beside him, and Leonardo put his arm around her shoulders. "Paris has been clarifying," he corrected, "for both Camila and me. The Duartes will pull out of the shipping partnership," his father warned. "Have you thought of that? Years of negotiation down the drain because of some marital spat." "This isn't a spat," Leonardo said firmly, "and the business consequences are secondary to our personal happiness." His mother gasped. "Who are you? My son would never speak this way." "I'm still your son, mother, just a more honest version." Leonardo took another deep breath. "There's something else you should know. I've reconnected with Sophia Martins." The silence was even more profound this time. "The housekeeper's daughter," his mother finally said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The girl we paid to stay away from you." Sophia stiffened beside him. "What?" she whispered. Leonardo looked at her in confusion, then back at the phone. "What are you talking about, mother?" Elena Alcantara laughed coldly. "Oh, did she never tell you? After you left for London, she came to us, threatening to follow you there. Said she couldn't live without you. Very dramatic." Sophia was shaking her head, her face pale. "We explained that you had a bright future ahead, one that didn't include the daughter of domestic help," his mother continued. "When she wouldn't listen to reason, we offered her money. Quite a generous sum, as I recall." "That's not true," Sophia whispered to Leonardo. "Enough to pay for her university education," Victor added. "A fair exchange for leaving our son alone." Leonardo looked at Sophia, seeing the shock and hurt in her eyes. "Is this true?" he asked softly. "Not the way they're saying it," Sophia insisted. "I never asked them for money." "But you took it," Elena said sharply, having heard Sophia's voice. "Is that her there with you? How convenient that she's reappeared now that you're successful." Leonardo's mind was reeling. "Mother, father, I'll call you back," he said abruptly, ending the call before they could protest. The silence in Sophia's apartment was heavy with unspoken questions. "Leo," Sophia began, her voice trembling. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what." "It was like," Leonardo said, moving slightly away from her on the sofa. "Did my parents pay you to leave me alone?" Sophia closed her eyes, visibly gathering her courage. "After you left for London, I was devastated. I kept trying to call you, but you never answered. I wrote letters that came back unopened." "I never got any calls or letters," Leonardo said, frowning. "I know that now," Sophia said. "I went to your parents' house hoping they would at least give me your address in London. Your mother met me at the door. She said you wanted to make a clean break, that you'd asked them to make sure I didn't contact you." "I never said that," Leonardo protested. "I didn't know that then," Sophia continued. "I was young, heartbroken. When I insisted on speaking to you directly, your father joined the conversation. He said my persistence was becoming problematic." Leonardo could all too easily imagine his father's cold dismissal. "Then they offered me a check," Sophia said, her voice hardening at the memory. "Called it a scholarship. Said that if I truly cared for you, I would want you to succeed without distractions. And you took it," Leonardo said, unable to keep the hurt from his voice. Sophia met his eyes directly. Yes, I did. Not to stay away from you. I already believed you didn't want me anymore. I took it because I was angry and proud and poor, and I thought, if they want to pay for getting rid of me, let them. Leonardo stood, pacing the small living room. You could have tried harder to reach me. I did. Sophia rose to face him. For 2 years, Leo, while you were building your new life, in London dating socialites, never once trying to contact me. I thought it was what you wanted, Leonardo countered. My mother told me you had moved on, that you were dating someone else, that you wanted a clean break. They stared at each other, the realization dawning that they had both been manipulated by his parents. 15 years, Sophia said softly. They stole 15 years from us. Leonardo's anger drained away, replaced by a profound sadness. And I let them. I should have fought harder. We both should have, Sophia admitted. But we were young, and they were very convincing. Leonardo moved back to her, taking her hands. The money they gave you, what did you do with it? Paid for my education, just like they said, Sophia answered. Literature degree, then graduate. School. I couldn't give it back, but I made sure every cent went towards something that would make me independent, never needing their money, or anyone else's, again. Leonardo nodded, understanding her pride. No more secrets, he said firmly. No more misunderstandings. From now on, we talk to each other directly, not through other people. Agreed, Sophia said, relief evident in her voice. No one comes between us again. Leonardo pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I'm sorry my parents treated you that way. And I'm sorry I didn't fight harder for us, Sophia murmured against his chest. As they held each other, Leonardo's phone rang again. His father calling back. He silenced it without answering. They'll try to interfere again, Sophia warned. They didn't want me for you 15 years ago. They certainly won't want me now. It doesn't matter what they want, Leonardo said firmly. I'm not that easily influenced anymore. Sophia looked unconvinced. Your family has a lot of power, Leo. Your life is tied to the Alcantara name, the company, the fortune. Leonardo considered her words seriously. She was right. His identity had always been inextricably linked to the Alcantara empire, but the past month had shown him there could be more to life than board meetings and balance sheets. What if it wasn't? He asked suddenly. What do you mean? What if I wasn't tied to all of that? Leonardo's mind was racing with possibilities. I could sell my shares in the company. Start something new, something of my own. Sophia looked alarmed. Leo, I'm not asking you to give up your family or your heritage. I know, he said, cupping her face in his hands. But maybe I need to. Not for you, for me. These past weeks, living simply, focusing on what really matters. It's been liberating. You'd resent me eventually, Sophia argued, if you gave up everything for me. Not for you, Leonardo corrected gently. For us, for the life we could build together. Sophia looked up at him. Hope and fear mingled in her eyes. What kind of life? An honest one, Leonardo said. One where we answer to ourselves, not to family expectations or social pressures. So you make it sound so simple, Sophia said, echoing her words from weeks ago. It won't be, Leonardo acknowledged, but I think it will be worth it. He kissed her softly. Don't you? Before Sophia could answer, Leonardo's phone rang again. This time with Camilla's ringtone. Unlike his parents' calls, this one he couldn't ignore. I'm sorry, he said to Sophia. I should take this. Sophia nodded understandingly. Their conversation would have to wait. Camilla? Leonardo answered. Is everything okay? Leonardo, Camilla's voice was strained. You need to come to the hospital. What's happened? Are you all right? It's my father, Camilla said, her voice breaking. He's had a heart attack. Here at the hospital while visiting me. It's serious, Leo, very serious. Leonardo's blood ran cold. Ricardo Duarte was a difficult man, but he was also Camilla's beloved father and a powerful figure in Brazilian business. I'll be right there, he promised. As he hung up, Leonardo looked at Sophia apologetically. I have to go. Of course, Sophia said immediately. Camilla needs you. Ricardo Duarte had a heart attack, he explained. If he doesn't survive... Go, Sofia urged. We'll talk later. Leonardo kissed her quickly before rushing out. As he hailed a taxi to the hospital, he couldn't help feeling that fate was once again interfering just when happiness seemed within reach. Ricardo's heart attack would have far-reaching implications for Camilla, for the divorce proceedings, for the business partnerships between their families. But this time, Leonardo was determined not to let circumstances control his choices. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with honesty and courage, fighting for the future he wanted, a future with Sofia. The hospital waiting room was tense when Leonardo arrived. Helena Duarte paced frantically while Camilla sat rigidly in a wheelchair, her face drawn with worry. "Leonardo," Camilla said with relief. "Thank you for coming." He knelt beside her wheelchair. "Any news?" "He's in surgery, triple bypass." Her voice trembled. "They don't know if he'll make it. Your father is a fighter, like his daughter." As they waited, Leonardo called Sofia to update her. "How is Camilla holding up?" Sofia asked with genuine concern. "As well as can be expected, she and her father are close. And you, are you okay?" "I'm worried about Camilla. This setback could affect her recovery." "She's strong," Sofia reassured him. "You've told me that yourself." "I'm not walking away from us," Leonardo promised, sensing her unspoken concern. "This is a family emergency, but it doesn't change what we discussed." Hours later, the surgeon appeared. "The surgery was successful. Senor Duarte is stable, but the next 48 hours are critical." Leonardo wheeled Camilla to the ICU, where Ricardo lay surrounded by monitoring equipment, looking suddenly aged and vulnerable. Helena rushed to her husband's side, whispering in Portuguese, while Camilla held her father's hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. After the visit, Leonardo took Camilla back to her room. "You should go home," she told him. "There's nothing more you can do tonight." "Are you sure?" "Mother will be with father. I need to sleep if I'm going to be strong. For them tomorrow." She studied his face. "Go to Sofia, tell her everything is still on track." Leonardo was surprised by her perception. "How did you know I was worried about that?" "Because I know you. You're afraid this crisis will derail our divorce, your future with her. It seems selfish to even think about that now." "It's human," Camilla corrected. "My father's condition doesn't change my decision." When Leonardo arrived at Sofia's apartment past midnight, she was waiting for him. They held each other tightly before going to bed, where they lay together in the darkness, discussing their future. "I spoke with my department chair today," Sofia said quietly, "about extending my sabbatical." "What did they say?" "It's possible. Another semester, maybe a year, if we decide to stay in Paris." "Paris has been good to us," Leonardo mused. "A fresh start, away from the pressures of Rio. And your business, Alcantara Industries. I could run things remotely, appoint a stronger executive team, reduce my day-to-day involvement. Would you really be happy stepping back from the company you've built?" "I built that company to prove something," Leonardo admitted. "To my father, to myself. These past weeks, despite all the chaos, I've felt more alive than I have in years." Morning brought unwelcome news. Leonardo woke to an email from his PR director with links to Brazilian tabloids all running the same story. Leonardo Alcantara was divorcing his model wife after her disfiguring accident, allegedly for another woman. "Someone leaked the divorce to the press," he told Sofia, showing her his phone. "They're painting me as a monster." His phone rang. "Camilla." "Have you seen the news?" she asked. "Just now." "It's not you, is it?" "Of course not. This kind of publicity is the last thing I want." "Any idea who then?" "My mother was on the phone half the night. She's furious about the divorce, convinced I'm not thinking clearly because of my injuries." At the hospital, Leonardo found reporters gathered outside. He slipped in through a side entrance and found Camilla looking more determined than he'd seen her since before the accident. "This is intolerable," she declared. "My father is fighting for his life, and these vultures are turning our private matters into entertainment." They coordinated their response to the press, with Camilla drafting a dignified statement, making it clear the divorce was mutual and amicable. As they worked, a nurse appeared. Madame Alcantara, there's someone here to see you. It was Antonio Vega, Camilla's former lover. Leonardo excused himself to check on Ricardo, leaving them alone. He found Helena at Ricardo's bedside. "You," she said coldly. "Haven't you done enough damage to this family? I think we both know who's responsible for the media circus outside." Leonardo replied calmly. Helena didn't deny it. "You are abandoning my daughter when she needs you most. Camilla doesn't want to be saved from this divorce. It was her idea as much as mine." Leonardo convinced Helena that the scandal would only harm Ricardo's recovery, and she reluctantly agreed to help contain the damage she had created. Next came a call from his father, demanding he reconsider the divorce for the sake of the business alliance with the Duartes. "This isn't just about Sofia," Leonardo told him firmly. "It's about living honestly. Camilla deserves that, so do I." "You've changed," his father said. "Paris has changed you." "Yes," Leonardo agreed. "For the better, I think." As he hung up, Leonardo felt a strange lightness. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he was standing firm against his father's manipulation, choosing his own path. His phone chimed with a text from Sofia. "Thinking of you. Stay strong." Leonardo smiled, typing back, "Clearer skies ahead. I promise." 3 months later, the Parisian autumn painted the city in rich golds and deep reds. Leonardo stood by the Seine, watching boats glide beneath the bridges, reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful evening when he'd first seen Sofia outside the bookstore. Ricardo Duarte had recovered enough to return to Brazil, though his doctors insisted he reduce his workload. The heart attack had changed him, softening his rigid demeanor. To everyone's surprise, he had ultimately supported Camilla's decision about the divorce, telling his wife that life was too short for unhappy marriages. The divorce itself had been finalized with remarkable efficiency, largely due to Camilla's insistence on fair, uncomplicated terms. She had returned to Brazil 2 weeks ago, walking with only a slight limp, her cognitive functions almost fully restored. Antonio had gone with her, their rekindled relationship flourishing despite Helena's initial disapproval. Leonardo's phone buzzed with a message from Sofia. "Meeting finished early. Waiting for you at our cafe." He smiled and began walking toward Shakespeare and Company, where their favorite cafe stood across the street. As he approached, he saw Sofia at their usual table, grading papers, a cup of coffee at her elbow. She looked up as if sensing him, her face lighting with a smile that still made his heart skip. "Professor Martins," he greeted her, leaning down for a kiss. "Mr. Alcantara," she replied playfully, "or should I say, former CEO." Leonardo sat across from her, grinning. "The board approved my resignation this morning. Miguel takes over as CEO next month." "How does it feel to be unemployed?" Sofia teased. "Liberating," Leonardo admitted, though consulting for the company 3 days a week hardly counts as unemployment. The arrangement had been his solution to the family business dilemma. He would remain on the board and consult on strategic matters, but step away from daily operations. His father had initially opposed the plan, but seeing Leonardo's determination, had eventually conceded. "And the new venture?" Sofia asked. "The foundation paperwork is almost complete." Leonardo's eyes shone with enthusiasm. "The Alcantara Martins Educational Foundation will be official by year's end. The foundation had been born from their shared passion for education. It would provide scholarships for underprivileged Brazilian students, a way to use the Alcantara wealth for something meaningful beyond profit margins." "My mother called," Sofia said, setting aside her papers. "She wants to know if we're coming for Christmas." "What did you tell her?" "That we'd discuss it." Sofia took his hand. "Would you be comfortable in Rio so soon?" Leonardo considered the question. "I think so, especially if we're staying with your mother rather than at my family's estate." Sofia's mother had been overjoyed about their reunion, holding none of the resentment that Leonardo's parents still harbored. His relationship with his own family remained strained, though there had been small signs of thawing in recent weeks. "Did you see Camilla's interview?" Sofia asked. "Yes." Leonardo smiled. She looked wonderful. Camilla had given an exclusive interview to Brazil's leading fashion magazine, discussing her recovery, her new charitable foundation for brain injury research, and yes, her relationship with Antonio. She had spoken graciously about Leonardo, describing their divorce as two people brave enough to seek happiness instead of convenience. "The apartment on Rue Saint-Louis?" Sophia asked, changing the subject. "The paperwork is signed. It's ours." Leonardo squeezed her hand. "Though your lease isn't up for another month." "I'll miss my little place," Sophia admitted, "but it's too small for two." Their decision to remain in Paris had come naturally. The city that had reunited them now felt like home, neutral ground where they could build something new together, away from the complex histories and family pressures of Rio. "I have something for you," Leonardo said, reaching into his pocket. He placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Sophia stared at it, then at him, her eyes widening. "Leo." "Open it," he urged gently. Inside was a simple but elegant ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "It's not an Alcantara family heirloom," Leonardo said. "I wanted something that was just ours, with no history attached." Sophia touched the ring hesitantly. "Are you sure? After everything with Camilla, the divorce?" "I've never been more certain of anything," Leonardo said firmly. "Sophia, we lost 15 years. I don't want to waste another day." "People will talk," she warned. "They'll say it's too soon." "Let them talk." Leonardo took the ring from the box. "The only opinion that matters is yours." Sophia looked into his eyes, searching. Whatever she sought, she seemed to find it. She extended her hand. "Yes," she said simply. As Leonardo slipped the ring onto her finger, a light rain began to fall, typical of Parisian autumn. Neither of them moved to seek shelter, too absorbed in the moment that had been 15 years in the making. "I think I've loved you every day since we were 18, Leonardo said softly. "Even when you thought you'd forgotten me?" Sophia asked. "Especially then," he admitted. "You were the standard against which I measured everything, though I didn't. Always realize it." Sophia leaned across the table and kissed him, uncaring of the rain that now fell more steadily around them. "We should go," Leonardo said when they finally broke apart. "Unless you want to get soaked." "Where?" Sophia asked. "Your place or mine?" "Ours," Leonardo corrected, helping her gather her papers. "Let's go home." As they walked through the rain-washed streets of Paris, hands entwined, Leonardo reflected that the path to this moment had been complicated, even painful at times. There had been heartbreak and separation, mistakes and regrets. But standing here now with Sophia beside him and their future stretching out before them, he wouldn't change a thing. In the city of light, they had found their way home to each other. In the city of love, they had learned that sometimes the heart knows better than the head. And in this moment, walking through rain-kissed streets with the woman he had never stopped loving, Leonardo Alcantara was, at last, exactly where he was meant to be.